Hello students, this is your biology teacher Pradnya Nigde. In the previous video of this chapter, we have seen the development of female gametophyte. Now in this video, we are going to start with the pollination, its types and double fertilization. As we know, the pollen grains are non-motile and they are usually carried from flower to flower by means of external agents. Thus, pollination is nothing but the transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma of the flower. So, pollination is defined as the transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma of the flower. It is the prerequisite for fertilization, means it is a necessary requirement because both the male and female gametes are non-motile. Moreover, gametes are produced at two different sites. Pollination, it is of two types, self-pollination and cross-pollination. Self-pollination, it is a type of pollination which occurs in a single flower or two flowers on a single plant. It results in inbreeding or selfing. While cross-pollination, it is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower of different plants but of the same species. Pollination, it can be further divided into three types based upon the sources of pollination. So let's see these three types. Number 1 is autogamy, that is self-pollination. Number 2, Jejunogamy, and number 3, xenogamy. Now let's see the details of these three types. Let's start with the first type, that is nothing but the autogamy or self-pollination. Autogamy, it is the transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma of the same flower. So, it is the transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma of the same flower. Autogamy, it is a type of pollination in which bisexual flower it is pollinated by its own pollen grains. Offsprings are genetically identical to their parents. For example, pea plant. In flowers with the exposed anthers and stigma, complete autogamy is rare. Autogamy in such flowers requires synchronization in pollen release and stigma receptivity. Also, anthers and stigma, they should be very close to each other. Flowers which use autogamy, it shows several adaptations in the structure of a flower to facilitate this process. Autogamy or self-pollination occurs without external pollinating agents. Now let's see more detailed information of this autogamy. Like I said, flowers which show the autogamy, they show several adaptations in the structure of a flower. So let's see these adaptations. Very first term, that is nothing but the chasmogamous flowers. Let's see what is meant by chasmogamy. When flower opens to expose its sex organs, it is called as chasmogamous flowers. I will once again repeat the statement. When flower opens to expose its sex organs, it is called chasmogamous flowers. Now, the second type is nothing but the cleistogamous flower. Now, what is meant by cleistogamy? Some flowers, they are self-pollinated even before the opening of the flower. Such condition is called cleistogamy. Underground flowers in some plants which exhibit the cleistogamy are never opened. For example, Commelina. Commelina bengalensis, this flower, it doesn't get open. Now, plants like Viola, then Oxalis and Commelina, they produce both the types of flowers, that is chasmogamous flower as well as cleistogamous flowers on the same plant. So you can see chasmogamous flower as well as underground cleistogamous flowers in the same plant in Viola, Oxalis and Commelina. Chasmogamous flowers, they are similar to flowers of other species with exposed anthers and stigma. Let's see the features of cleistogamous flowers. These flowers, they do not open at all. Anthers and stigma, they lie close to each other. Obviously, they are autogamous. When anthers dehisce in the flower buds, pollen grain comes in contact with the stigma for pollination. Cleistogamous flowers, they produce assured seed set even in the absence of pollinators. And cleistogamy leads to inbreeding depression. We will discuss this inbreeding depression term at the last. Now, let's see what is jeitonogamy. It is the transfer of pollen grain to a stigma of a different flower produced on the same plant. So, it is the transfer of pollen grain from anther to the stigma of another flower but which is present on the same plant. It is functionally similar to the cross pollination because it involves the pollinating agents. But it cannot bring about the genetic variations because both the flower they belong to the same plant. It is only of the ecological significance. For example, Cucurbita maxima. It is similar to the autogamy as pollen grains come from the same plant. So, jeitonogamy, it is functionally similar to cross pollination, but it is genetically similar to self pollination since pollen grains come from the same plant. Now let's see xenogamy. We have seen already what is meant by cross pollination. Cross pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower of different plants of the same species. Cross pollination, xenogamy, it is a type of cross pollination when pollen grain of one flower it is deposited on the stigma of a flower of a different plant belonging to the same species with the help of pollinating agency. Obviously, it generates genetically varied offsprings. Majority of the flowering plants depend upon the transfer of pollen grains. Virtually all seed plants need to be pollinated. Most of the food and fiber crops grown throughout the world depend upon the pollinators for reproduction. So let's see the agents responsible for pollination, which have been grouped into two main categories: abiotic agent and biotic agent. Abiotic agents, these are non-living agents which include wind and water. Let's see their details. Biotic agents, it includes the living agents. About 80% of the plants require the help of other living, moving creatures such as insects, then birds, bats, snails to transfer their pollens from one flower to another. These also sustain our ecosystem and produce natural resources by helping plants to reproduce. Let's see their details. Abiotic agents, these are non-living agents which include the wind and water. Let's see the first type under abiotic agent, that is pollination by wind. Pollination by wind is also known as the anemophily. Most of the important crop plants are wind pollinated. These plants include wheat, rice, corn, rye, barley and oats. Palms are also wind pollinating plants. Wind pollinated flowers, they often have a single ovule in each ovary and numerous flowers packed into an inflorescence. Example is corn cob. The tassels are the stigma and the style which wave in the wind to trap the pollen grains. Wind pollination, it is quite common in grasses. Let's see the adaptations in the anemophilous flowers. Number 1. The flowers are small, inconspicuous. Inconspicuous means they are small or they are not very vivid and clear. They are colorless, without nectar and fragrance. Number 2. Pollen grains are light in weight. They are dry and produced in large number to increase the chances of pollination because there is a huge wastage of pollen grains in the wind pollination. This was the second adaptation. Now, number 3. Stigma is feathery to trap the pollens carried by the wind currents. Number 4. Stigma are exerted. Exerted means they are coming out with long filaments and versatile anthers. We have seen the versatile anthers in the 11th standard. Versatile anthers, they move like seesaw. Stamen and stigmas, they are exposed to air currents. So, let's summarize the pollination by wind or adaptation. Flowers produce large amount of pollen. Then, pollen grains are light and non-sticky. Number 3. They often possess well exposed stamens for easy dispersion of pollens into wind currents. Large and feathery stigma to trap airborne pollen grains. So flowers are small, inconspicuous, colorless, without nectar and fragrance. Number 2. Pollen grains are light in weight, dry, produced in large number to increase the chances of pollination. Number 3. Stigma is feathery to catch or to trap the pollens. Number 4. Stamens are exerted with long filaments and versatile anthers. And number 5. Stamen and stigmas, they are exposed to air currents. Let's see the second type of pollination under abiotic agents category, that is pollination by water. Pollination by water is also called as hydrophily. It is quite rare and it is limited to about 30 genera which are mostly monocotyledons. Examples are Vallisneria, Hydrilla, these are freshwater plants, and Zostera, that is nothing but the seagrass, it is a marine plant. So you can see Vallisneria and Hydrilla as well as seagrass. But in lower plants, water is a regular mode of transport for the male gametes. Distribution of some bryophytes and pteridophytes, it is limited because they need water for the transport of male gametes and fertilization. Pollination by water, which is also known as the hydrophily, it shows two types. Number 1, epihydrophily, and number 2, hypohydrophily. Let's see the details of epihydrophily. Now, epi means above and hydrophily means pollination by water. So, the pollination which takes place above the water surface, it is known as epihydrophily. The pollen grains, they float on the water surface and reach the stigma of the female flower. For example, Vallisneria, which is a submerged freshwater plant. In this, female flowers reach the water surface temporarily to ensure the pollination, and male flowers float on the surface of water. So, we will once again repeat the statement. The pollen grains, they float on the water surface and they reach the stigma of the female flower. For example, Vallisneria plant. It is a submerged, dioecious and freshwater aquatic plant in which female flower reach the water surface temporarily to ensure the pollination, and male flowers, they float on the surface of water. So, as we have discussed, Vallisneria is a dioecious plant, means male and female flower, they are present on the two different plant. So, Vallisneria, it is a submerged freshwater aquatic plant. Female flower reach the water surface to catch the pollen grains from the male flowers which float on the surface of water. For epihydrophily to occur, some specific structural changes we can see in such plants. For example, specific gravity of pollen grain, it is equal to that of the water. That is why these pollen grains, they can float on the surface of water. Some aquatic plants are anemophilous. That is, it means, for example, Halogaris, and some aquatic plants are entomophilous, that is insect pollinating. For example, lotus, water hyacinth, water lily, etc. Now, let's see hydrophily, hypohydrophily. Pollination which occurs below the surface of water, it is known as hypohydrophily. Hypo means below. Hydrophily means pollination by water. For example, Zostera or seagrass. Here, the pollen grains are heavier than water, so they sink down and they caught by the stigmas of the female flower. In case of Zostera or seagrass, the pollen grains are long, ribbon-like and without exine. Now, let's see the adaptations which takes place in hydrophilous flowers. Number 1. Flowers, they are small and inconspicuous like in Vallisneria. Perianth and other floral parts, they are unwettable. It means they do not get wet because they are having a mucilaginous covering to protect from wetting. Number 3. Pollen grains are long and unwettable due to presence of mucilage. And number 4. Nectar and fragrance are lacking in the flowers. Obviously, some plants, they are exception to this adaptation. For example, entomophilous flowers like lotus. You can see lotus as well as water hyacinth and water lily. These plants, they are aquatic. So, not all aquatic plants, they use hydrophily. In most of the aquatic plants like water hyacinth, water lily, flowers emerge above the level of water for entomophily or anemophily. Now, let's see the second category of agents of pollination, that is biotic agents. Biotic agents, like I said, it includes living agents. These include the agents like insects, birds, then bats, snails, to transfer their pollens from flower to another. These also sustain our ecosystem and produce natural resources by helping plants to reproduce. Butterflies, flies, beetles, wasps, ants, moths, birds, that is sunbirds and hummingbirds, then bats, primates like lemurs, arboreal, that is tree-dwelling rodents, reptiles, that is lizards, etc. They include the biotic agents. Pollination by insects, it is known as entomophily. Particularly, bees are more common in this entomophily. Often flowers of animal pollinated plants are specifically adapted for a particular species of animals. Let's see the pollination by insects, that is entomophily, in detail. It occurs in rose, jasmine, sistrum, like plants, etc. Let's see the adaptations in entomophilous flowers. Number 1. These are large, showy, and often brightly colored. They are rich in nectar. The flowers produce sweet odor. They have nectar glands to produce the nectar. Stigma is rough due to presence of hair, and it is sticky. Stigma is sticky due to mucilaginous secretion. The pollen grains are spiny and surrounded by a yellow sticky substance called as pollen kit. Pollenkit, pollen kit. Number 4. Some plants have special adaptations for the insect visitor to help in the cross pollination. For example, lever mechanism or turnpike mechanism in salvia. Let's study the pollination by birds. Pollination by birds, it is also known as the ornithophy. Only a few types of birds are specialized for pollination. They usually have small size and long beaks. Example, sunbirds and hummingbirds. Some ornithophilous plants are bombax, then callistemon, that is bottlebrush. Callistemon or bottlebrush plant, it is also present in our college campus right in front of the high school library at the ground. Let's study the adaptations in ornithophorus flowers. Number 1. Flowers are usually bright colored. They are large and showy. Number 2. They secrete profuse and dilute nectar, means abundant nectar. Number 3. Pollen grains are sticky and spiny. Number 4. Flowers are generally without fragrance because birds, they have poor sense of smell. So anyways, it is going to get waste if they are producing the fragrance. Now let's see the pollination by bats or Chiropterophily. Bats can transport the pollens over long distance, sometimes several kilometers also. Let's see the adaptation which takes place in Chiropterophilus flowers. Number 1. Flowers are dull colored with the strong fragrance, which is contradictory to the ornithophilus flower. Number 2. They secrete abundant nectar. Number 3. Flowers produce large amount of edible pollen grains. Example is Anthocephalus, that is Kadamba tree, Adansonia, that is baobab tree, and Kigelia, that is sausage tree. So we have seen 3 adaptations in Chiropterophilus flowers. Flowers, they are dull colored, they are having strong fragrance, mostly like the rotten things. Number 2, they secrete abundant nectar. Number 3, flowers produce large amount of edible pollen grains. So that was the adaptations for Chiropterophilus flowers. Let's see some interesting facts about the pollination. Some plants provide safe places as floral reward to lay the eggs. For example, Amorphophallus. It has the tallest flower of 6 feet. A moth species and the plant Yucca cannot complete their life cycle without each other. The moth, it deposits eggs in the locule of the ovary. The flower gets pollinated by the moth and the larvae comes out of the eggs as seed starts developing. Many insects consume pollen or nectar without bringing about the pollination. They are called as pollen or nectar robbers. Let's start with the new concept, that is outbreeding devices. Many plants have mechanisms that discourage or prevent the self-pollination. To promote the cross-pollination and thus increase the genetic diversity, plants have evolved a wide variety of sexual strategies. Genetic diversity is an essential factor for evolution by natural selection. So, plants have developed many devices to encourage the cross-pollination. Now, why the outbreeding devices they are developed? One reason we have already seen, that genetic diversity, which is essential for evolution, it occurs only due to the cross-pollination, as well as continued self-pollination, it results in the inbreeding depression. Now, what is meant by inbreeding depression? Inbreeding depression, it is nothing but it reduces the biological fitness of the species, as well as it also reduces the vigor and vitality of that particular plant. So continued self-pollination results in such reduced performance or reduced biological fitness of that species. That is inbreeding depression. To avoid the self-pollination and encourage cross-pollination, there are some devices in plants. They are nothing but number 1, unisexuality, number 2, dichogamy, number 3, prepotency, and number 4, heterostyle or heteromorphy, number 5, hercogamy, and number 6, self-incompatibility or self-sterility. Let's see their details. Let's discuss unisexuality. Now, in some plants, either male or female flowers they are present in one plant. Means the plant bears either male or female flowers. It is also called as dioecium. As flowers are unisexual in nature, self-pollination it is not possible. Plants may be monoecious, for example maize, or dioecious like papaya. If you take the example of monoecious plant that is maize, you have seen that male and female inflorescence they are present on the same plant but they are present at the various height. And in case of dioecious plant like papaya, male flower it is present on the male plant which is different and female flowers they are present on the female plant. So it is an example of dioecious plant. So this unisexuality it is one of the device of outbreeding. Now next example is nothing but the dichogamy. Now dichogamy it is nothing but avoiding the synchronization. In this device, anthers and stigmas they mature at different times in a bisexual flower so as to prevent the self-pollination. It is once again divided into two types. In that case, number 1, protandry. In protandry, androecium it matures earlier than the gynoecium. So, for example, this type of protandry it is seen in case of disc florets of sunflower. And second type is nothing but the protogyny. In this type, gynoecium it matures earlier than the androecium. For example, gloriosa plant. So protandry and protogyny it comes under the dichogamy category. In this, pollen grain it is released before the stigma which becomes receptive, or stigma becomes receptive before the release of pollen. So protandry means androecium matures first and then gynoecium. Protogyny means gynoecium matures first and then androecium. Now let's study what is heteromorphy or heterostyly. In some plants like primrose, there are 2 or 3 forms or types of flowers in the single plant, in which stigmas and anthers they are placed at different levels. For example, heterostyly and heteroanthy. Heterostyly, hetero means different length of style it is seen. So, in primrose plants, 3 or 2 different types of flowers are produced in which stigmas and anthers they are placed at different levels. So different heights or different lengths of styles are seen. This prevents the pollens from reaching to the stigma and pollinating it. In heteromorphic flowers, pollen grains produced from anther pollinate stigmas produced at the same level. So in heteromorphic flowers, I will repeat my statement. In heteromorphic flowers, pollen grains produced from anther pollinate the stigmas produced at the same level. Let's see what is self-incompatibility or self-sterility. Self-incompatibility it is a genetic mechanism due to which the germination of pollen on the stigma of the same flower is inhibited. For example, tobacco plant. By inhibiting the pollen germination or pollen tube growth in the pistil. So it is a genetic mechanism to prevent the self-pollination from the same flower or the other flowers of the same plant from fertilization by inhibiting the pollen germination or pollen tube growth in the pistil. Unisexuality, we have already discussed about this. Production of unisexual flowers, it is also one of the device under outbreeding devices. If male and female flowers they are present on the same plant that is monoecious, example is nothing but the maize plant, it prevents autogamy but not diatonogamy. Now you can see the dioecious unisexual producing plant, that is nothing but the papaya. You can see this is a male plant of papaya and this is a female plant. So this avoids the self-pollination. Now, one of the device which is not shown in this PPT is hercogamy. It is a mechanical device to prevent self-pollination in a bisexual flower. In plants, natural physical barrier is present between the two sex organs and avoid the contact of pollen grain with the stigma of the same flower. Example is Calotropis. You must have seen the rui plant. In this Calotropis or rui plant, you must have seen the flower also. In that flower, you can see a particular pentagonal structure which is nothing but the stigma. It is positioned above the level of anthers, that is pollinia, to avoid the self-pollination. Now we have to study the pollen-pistil interaction. Let's see. All the events from deposition of pollen grain on the stigma to the entry of pollen tube in the ovule, they are referred to as the pollen-pistil interaction. It is a very dynamic process involving pollen recognition followed by promotion or inhibition of the pollen germination. Now, how does this happen? Let's see. Basically, cross-pollination by any agent, it is always by chance. It does not guarantee the transfer of the right type of pollen, that is, compatible pollen of the same species as the stigma. So, pollination thus does not ensure the process of fertilization. Hence, in this case, what happens? Quite often, the wrong type of pollen, that is, either from the other species or from the same plant, but it is self-incompatible pollen, it lands on the stigma. I will once again repeat my statement. Cross-pollination does not guarantee the transfer of right type of pollen, that is compatible pollen of the same species as the stigma. Quite often, the wrong type of pollen, that is either from the other species or from the same plant, but it is self-incompatible which lands on the stigma. Now, the pistil has the ability to recognize the pollen. If it is the right type, the pistil accepts it and promotes the post-pollination events which leads to fertilization. But what happens if it is a wrong type of pollen? If it is a wrong type, the pistil rejects it by preventing germination of the pollen on the stigma or growth of the pollen tube in the style. Thus, only right type, that is compatible pollen, germinates on the stigma and a pollen tube comes out through one of the germ pores. The contents of the pollen grain move into the pollen tube and it grows through the tissues of the stigma and then style. In most of the plants, pollen grains, they are shed at the two-celled stage. That is, we have seen two-celled stage means the stage of the pollen grain in which vegetative cell and generative cell, they are formed. The generative cell divides and it forms two male gametes during the growth of the pollen tube. Now, after the reaching ovary, pollen tube enters the ovule through the micropyle and then enters one of the synergids through the filiform apparatus and bursts to release the male gametes. All these events are a part of pollen-pistil interaction. The ability of a pistil to recognize the pollen is due to certain chemical components present in the pollen grain which interact with those of the pistil, that is nothing but the gynoecium or stigma. Now, the compatible pollen absorbs water and nutrients from the surface of the stigma. It actually happens before only, but I am repeating the concept. The compatible pollen grains absorb the water and nutrients from the surface of stigma germinates and produces the pollen tube. Its growth through the style is determined by specific chemicals. Stigmatic surface provides essential prerequisites for the successful germination. What does it mean? It means stigmatic surface provides some essential requirements, some essential conditions for the successful germination. They are absent in the pollen. The pollen tube then finally pushed through the ovule and reaches the embryo sac. The tip of the pollen tube enters in one of the synergids and then ruptures to release the contents. Due to the pollen-pistil interaction, intense competition develops even in the compatible pollen grains, that is male gametes. So, outbreeding devices plays important role in sexual reproduction and seed formation. Pollen grain can also be induced to germinate in a synthetic medium. Sucrose induces the pollen germination and tube growth in vitro. Addition of boric acid into that medium facilitates and accelerates the pollen germination. In the last syllabus, there was a practical of pollen germination regarding this. In that, we used to take the pollen grains from Catharanthus flower or tuberose flowers. We used to provide the nutrient medium like sucrose. We used to add boric acid in that, and in that condition we used to prepare the slide in which this medium was supposed to give to that particular pollen grain. After some times, maybe 30 to 45 minutes after that, the pollen grain germinates and it used to develop the pollen tube. So that was the practical regarding the development of pollen tube or pollen germination. In the last syllabus, it was there. So, this is about the pollen-pistil interaction. Now, let's see what is artificial hybridization. It is one of the major approaches used in the crop improvement. Only the desired pollen grains are hand pollinated and used for fertilization. Means the desired pollen grains, they are manually dusted over the stigma and pollination it occurs. So it is like artificial practice, then it is used for fertilization. This is accomplished through the emasculation and bagging procedure. So emasculation and bagging, these two processes we have to see. Emasculation, it is nothing but the removal of anthers from the bisexual flower bud of a female parent before the anther dehisces. Means before the pollen grains are formed or anthesis takes place, before that only anthers are removed from the flower. So that is why it is done. It is to make the flower as a female flower. Next is nothing but the bagging. Here emasculated flowers are covered with a suitable bag, which is made up of a butter paper or plastic paper, polythene bag, to prevent the contamination of its stigma with unwanted pollen. When the stigma attains receptivity, mature pollen grains collected from the anthers of the male parent, they are dusted on the stigma. Then the flowers are rebagged and allowed to develop the fruit. This is nothing but the artificial hybridization. For unisexual flower, there is no need for emasculation. Female flower buds are bagged before the flowers open. When the stigma becomes receptive, pollination is carried out using the desired pollen and the flowers, they are rebagged. Now, let's see what is double fertilization. Fusion of one male gamete with the egg and that of the another male gamete with the secondary nucleus, it is called as double fertilization. I will once again repeat the definition. Fusion of one of the male gamete with the egg and another male gamete with the secondary nucleus, it is called as double fertilization. Extremely sorry, egg is present over here. So fusion of one of the male gamete with the egg and second male gamete with the secondary nucleus. So it is called as double fertilization. Let's see the details of double fertilization. Pollen grain germinates on the stigma to form the pollen tube. Pollen grain has two non-motile male gametes, thin cytoplasm and degenerating tube nucleus. On reaching the ovary, the pollen tube, if enters through the micropyle, it is called as porogamy. If pollen tube enters through the integuments, it is called as mesogamy. And if this pollen tube enters through the chalaza, it is called as chalazogamy. The diagram for this porogamy, chalazogamy and mesogamy, it is given on page number 10. You can refer that diagram. So if the entry of pollen tube occurs through the micropyle, it is called as porogamy. If it occurs through the integuments, it is called as mesogamy. And if the entry of pollen tube occurs through the chalaza, it is called as chalazogamy. Finally, whatever may be the pathway, the pollen tube always penetrates the embryo sac of ovule through its micropylar end. So whether it is porogamy or mesogamy or chalazogamy, whatever may be the place of entry into the ovule, pollen tube always enters the embryo sac near the egg apparatus, that is nothing but the micropylar end. Now let's see the actual process of this double fertilization. In this case, pollen tube, it is attracted by the filiform apparatus of the synergids. Pollen tube tip absorbs the water from one of the synergids and bursts to open to release two male gametes. Now let's see the first fertilization and second fertilization. First fertilization, it is also known as the syngamy. One of the male gametes fuses with the egg and forms diploid zygote or oospore. This is called as syngamy or first fertilization. So I will once again repeat the definition. One of the male gamete fuses with the egg and forms diploid zygote or oospore. This is called as syngamy or first fertilization. Now let's see what is second fertilization. Second male gametes fuses with the diploid secondary nucleus to form the triploid primary endosperm nucleus, and thus it forms the PEN, that is triploid primary endosperm nucleus. Now this is called as triple fusion. As each of the polar nuclei is a sister nucleus of the egg, it is also called as the second fertilization. I will once again repeat my statement. As each of the polar nuclei is sister nucleus of the egg, it is also called as the second fertilization. So first male gamete fuses with the egg to form the zygote. Second male gamete fuses with the secondary nucleus to form the primary endosperm nucleus. As it involves the fusion of three haploid nuclei, it is also called as the triple fusion. Now, syngamy is the fusion of haploid male gamete with the haploid female gamete. Obviously, it produces the diploid zygote. Whereas in triple fusion, second haploid male gamete fuses with the diploid secondary nucleus. It forms triploid primary endosperm nucleus, that is triploid endosperm. The zygote develops into an embryo. So what is the future of this zygote? It develops to form the embryo. And what about the PEN, that is primary endosperm nucleus? It develops into triploid endosperm. So this was the future or fate of the zygote and primary endosperm nucleus. Zygote develops to form the embryo. Triploid PEN develops to form the triploid endosperm. The zygote, so thus it develops into embryo. Then syngamy, it is a type of generative fertilization, whereas triple fusion, it is a type of vegetative fertilization. So you have to keep this thing in mind. Syngamy, it is a type of generative fertilization, and triple fusion, it is a type of vegetative fertilization. here both male and male gametes participate, and therefore it is described as double fertilization. Both the male gametes, they are used, that's why it is known as double fertilization. Now let's see the significance of double fertilization. Number 1, it is a unique feature of angiosperms. So you can see double fertilization process only in angiosperm. It ensures that the parent plant invests a seed with a food store only if the egg is fertilized. The diploid zygote develops into an embryo which consequently develops into a new plant. I will once again repeat the statement. Diploid zygote develops into an embryo. Finally, it develops into a new plant. Third one, the triploid primary endosperm nucleus develops into the nutritive endosperm. It restores the diploid condition by the fusion of haploid male gamete with the haploid female gamete. Haploid male gamete with the haploid female gamete, it restores the diploid condition of the zygote. That is through the syngamy. It also helps to avoid the polyembryony because two male gametes they were available, but still syngamy occurs over here and second male gamete it is used over here. So it helps to avoid the polyembryony. So it is an event unique to the flowering plants that we have seen. The central cell after triple fission, we have seen it develops to form the endosperm, which provides nutrition to the developing embryo. And zygote, obviously, it itself develops to form the embryo. So this was about the double fertilization. I have already posted a video regarding the double fertilization in the previous PPT. So you will study this content over here and you will see that video of double fertilization in that PPT. I will once again individually post that video for you, but still you have to study the contents from this PPT only. So I hope you have understood the topic very well. If you have any queries, please ask me. So this ends the topic up to double fertilization. Thank you.